post in the questions box, and we'll take as much time as needed after the webinar to answer all your guys' questions. Today, I am going over Wi-Fi and Z-Wave, what they are, where they fit, how they work together. Okay, so with that being said, first, Wi-Fi versus Z-Wave. When you guys see the Wi-Fi label on a box or you hear Wi-Fi, right, you guys kind of know what that means. We've had Wi-Fi for years, okay, and now it's everywhere. It's in college campuses, libraries, airports, you know, in the home. But with that being said, a lot of you guys are, you guys are here for a reason. You guys are installers. You guys have seen or heard of Z-Wave. Some of you guys have probably used Z-Wave. Some of you may not have. Okay, so we're going to also go and focus a little more on Z-Wave today than Wi-Fi, but we're going to need to know what they are. So both of them have something in common. Both are wireless networks. They both let your devices communicate with one another. They just do it in different ways. So the question is, and this is why we did the webinar, which one should we use and where? Okay, and this is getting more prevalent because of all of the Wi-Fi devices, all of the IoT, the connected home. And this is one of the main driving factors on why I wanted to put this webinar on. So first, we're going to go into what is Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is an older technology. Okay, it was introduced back in 1998. Some of us may think, well, that's not that old. But in electronics terms, that's really old. Okay, what it does, it creates a local area network without the need for cabling. Okay, when you hear the phrase wireless internet, most often people think of it as a Wi-Fi network created by a router. But that's not what's creating your internet, right? That's just one point. It actually doesn't just come from the Wi-Fi of the router, but also has a modem, right? The access point of the router communicates to the modem, which relies on a physical connection to a telephone line, a fiber optic cable, a coax, or a wireless connection to a cellular tower. So there's a lot of pieces in line that have to get out to the outside world. And most devices that are reliant on Wi-Fi rely on an outside internet connection. So when you connect your device to a Wi-Fi network, you're also connecting it to a router and to a switch, to a modem, which then connects to the internet. Now, when you have a device connected to a wireless network, or multiple devices connected to a wireless network, they can see each other. Maybe not directly, but if you have the ability to have a piece of software or something to be able to scan the network, you can actually find every device on that network. Now again, we're just going generalization. There are ways to hide that, and we're not going to get into that right now. But with Wi-Fi, what this does, it allows separate computers in the same area to exchange files or play games or, you know, access media. Now, what is Wi-Fi, or what is Z-Wave? Okay. Z-Wave started again a long time ago. People think that Z-Wave is a newer technology. It's really not. It was created back in 2001. So let's think about this. Wi-Fi was created back in 1998, really. 2001 was when Z-Wave was created. So it's not a new technology. 7 years after it was created, it was sold to Sigma Designs. This is not an open platform. It is owned by somebody. It was sold to Sigma Designs. And it was actually just sold again, and I did not put this on here yet. Z-Wave is a mesh network that connects devices using a low energy radio waves. And that's really important. We're going to get into that in a minute. Okay, a mesh network is decentralized, meaning it is not reliant on one device. It's not reliant on a router. It's not reliant on a modem. It's not reliant on an access point. With the internet, your connection goes down. If your modem fails, if your ISP suffers an outage, or something happens to a cable going somewhere, most of the internet traffic goes down if you're using Wi-Fi. This does not happen with Z-Wave. In a mesh network, devices communicate directly with one another without a middleman. So much more robust. Okay, if two devices are out of range from each other, they may utilize a third device, meaning if you've got two light switches or two receptacles, two of anything, if two devices are out of range from each other, they can actually use a third device as a bridge and basically hop that signal from using that third device without the third device having access to or even realizing what's being communicated through it. And that's because of the security layer. So with Z-Wave, the more devices you have, the stronger the network. So I'm going to say that one more time because I get this question a lot with Z-Wave. Hey, I put in a Z-Wave lock. It's not working. Well, it's the only Z-Wave device you have. The more devices, the stronger the network with Z-Wave. If there are 100 devices in a building, there are many more routes for that message to travel than if there were only 5, 2, 1, okay? As long as there are enough devices within range from each other, the system stays online. And this is the idea of a system of this is the idea behind systems like Z-Wave, okay? So the more devices you have, the more routes it can take. So if one device fails, it will reroute. And that's one of the nice things behind Z-Wave. Automatic lights, garage door openers, security systems, and other devices have long made use of Z-Wave. This is not a new technology, okay? There are more than 600 companies that have invested in Z-Wave, with over 2,000 certified Z-Wave products out there. If this was a not reliable protocol, do you think over 600 companies would have invested in Z-Wave? Now, which one is better? We see this all the time, okay? And I get this call all the time. What is Wi-Fi? There's this Wi-Fi device. Can I use it? Can I communicate with it? Okay, and more devices are going Wi-Fi, right? Everything wants to be Wi-Fi. Nobody wants to pull wires on anymore. So the question is, which one is better? As usual, the answer is it depends, right? Depends on the device, depends on the application. So let's look at the resiliency between Wi-Fi and Z-Wave. Wi-Fi is centralized, okay? Meaning, depending on the presence of a router and a network and an access point or multiple access points. A mesh network, Z-Wave is a little more resilient in security systems, in devices that you do not need to get to the outside world, in things that you need to have work all the time. The more Z-Wave devices you have, the better off you are, like I said before. Now, per Z-Wave network, you have a max of 232 nodes or devices that you can have on a Z-Wave network. So keep that in mind. And again, there are ways to expand this. We're just going over the general idea of this. Now, with this premise, that is the exact opposite of Wi-Fi. The more devices you connect to a Wi-Fi access point, to a Wi-Fi router, the slower it gets. So how do you fix this? You put in more access points. You put in a stronger Wi-Fi system, but you're still reliant on that Wi-Fi, that access point or that network. One other thing, when you're looking at battery-operated devices, Wi-Fi is a huge battery drain because it's constantly communicating. So think about trying to do a battery-operated sensor or a battery-operated door lock that has to rely on Wi-Fi. It's a massive drain. You do not want to have to be running around and replacing batteries every day or two in a Wi-Fi device because it's constantly communicating. Think about how often do you have to charge your laptop or your phone? You guys know that your smartphone, you have to recharge every night, sometimes multiple times a day, depending on the phone you got or how much you use, because of the amount of data that is communicating over Wi-Fi. Z-Wave requires very little battery power because it only supports transmission data rates up to 100 kilobits a second. Now, you guys may think, hey, that's slow. There's not a lot of data that needs to be communicated. Okay, you're not streaming video over your Z-Wave network. And again, this is where Wi-Fi and Z-Wave go hand in hand. For those devices that don't need a lot of transmission rate, Z-Wave is much more resilient. If you need wide packets of data, a lot of bandwidth, you are going to want to go with Wi-Fi. Now, the importance of battery life is less relevant around the home, where many of the gadgets are plugging directly into a power source. Cameras, they're plugging into a power source. A lot of your devices that are using a lot of data are plugging right in. Let's talk about security and privacy. What's better? Is it Z-Wave? Is it Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi is very vulnerable to a wide range of security exploits and attacks. You see it all the time. You see firmware updates to access points. You see, just recently, there was a release where there was a crack, okay, an exploit that was able to gain access to networks. Okay, Wi-Fi is much more vulnerable than Z-Wave is. Z-Wave is a closed system, okay, and with being a closed system, they're able to add extra layers of protection. Every Z-Wave network has its own unique ID for communicating with the hub, meaning every Z-Wave device can only be connected to one hub at a time. It cannot be connected to two hubs. It also has a AES 128-bit encryption. That's the same encryption that banks use. Okay, so it is very secure. Think about this. You guys are carrying around devices in your pocket that are broadcasting their location. Is that a great way to stay private? Companies already use Wi-Fi in your phones to track where you are. We haven't touched base with it, but there's also a thing that says that's called Wi-Fi Aware. And that actually doesn't even have to use an outside internet connection, and it uses proximity over Wi-Fi to see what other devices are around you. It's not really very secure. Now, if you're talking about a security system, if you're talking about things that you want to have secure, that's a huge thing. One other thing that I want to touch base on, and I haven't put in this PowerPoint yet, but it comes up all the time. With all of the IoT devices, I get it all the time. Can this device communicate with another device? And the answer is always, it depends. And the reason being, when you're talking about a Wi-Fi device, there's many layers of network protocols, but there's two I'm going to pinpoint on: the transport layer and the application layer. Transport layer is basically the broadcast, the communication layer. Okay, that's your traffic. That's your road that it's communicating on. When it blasts a transmission down it, everybody on the network sees it. Okay. Application layer is actually what type of language it's sending. And that means that the other device may not be able to understand the language that it sent. Great example. I get emails from China. My email account will always get that email. But when I open up the email, it's all in Chinese. I don't know how to read Chinese. I can't understand that email. I have to have a separate piece of software to translate that email so I can read it. Now, when you're talking about two devices from two different manufacturers, they may all get that same email, but did the manufacturer write a translation or a translator program to understand that? And that's where the issue with Wi-Fi is. Okay, with Z-Wave, since it's owned by one company, they have a Z-Wave alliance that makes sure that every device out there is using the same translation. So every device can communicate with each other. Now, are they both necessary? They are. Both Wi-Fi and Z-Wave are necessary. Many Z-Wave devices also can connect to Wi-Fi. And how are you going to be able to control your Z-Wave system without having Wi-Fi? You want to be able to control your system from your phone, from your tablet, from the outside world. You need to have Wi-Fi and or a network connection. Okay. Wi-Fi and Z-Wave can both be used together, sometimes to solve the same problem, but they both have their own place. Okay. So there is a lot of differences in Z-Wave and Wi-Fi. And again, I just touched on the wide band of it. Like I said, I can go into two full day sessions on Z-Wave and Wi-Fi. Now, with that being said, I want to see if you guys have some questions on some of the stuff I just talked about. I know it's very hard to have me put this all into a 20-minute webinar. I've got a lot of people that you guys have signed up and hopped on, and I know we did not get into a ton, the nitty-gritties of Wi-Fi and Z-Wave. The reason being is this is more of the difference between them. On my Capital Sales YouTube channel, I have a webinar strictly on Z-Wave. I have a webinar strictly on Wi-Fi. And I definitely recommend you guys hop on and watch those. I can't get into every little bit of it in a 20-minute webinar. So, with that being said, let's get into this. One is talking about the biggest difference between Zigbee and Z-Wave. We did not touch base on Zigbee at all. That's a little different. That is one that I may want to take offline. Some of the differences, I'll touch base on some of the higher differences between them. Z-Wave, it's owned by one company, the Z-Wave chip is. And by doing that, having one company own it, you know that every Z-Wave device will work together. Zigbee, that is not the case. A lot like Wi-Fi, where two different devices that are Wi-Fi don't always mean that they can work together. Okay, there is nobody that is managing Zigbee to make sure that every Zigbee device will work together. That is one big difference between them. Now, there are some differences protocols, but that does not mean that one is better than the other. Those are some of the big differences. One other thing to keep in mind, Wi-Fi, you are limited to 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz bandwidth. Those are both getting very congested and they're very short waves, meaning they don't go through as much stuff. The Z-Wave is used 900 megahertz frequency in the US. That will penetrate a lot farther than a 2.4 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz frequency wave. So with that being said, 900 megahertz, there's a lot less congestion. Much easier to install, a lot less interference. Awesome, guys. The questions are rolling in here. And this is why I kind of wanted to keep it short, because I knew we were going to have a lot of questions on here. Do we have any Z-Wave devices available at Capital Sales? So I tried very hard not to do any brand-specific items in the webinar, but now we're in the questions, and I can say things. Yes, we do have a fair amount of Z-Wave devices at Capital Sales. We have one of the leaders in Z-Wave, Fabaro, makes very nice high-end Z-Wave products, a lot of applications, great gateways and hubs. We also have Schlag door locks. We also have Legrand, Leviton. We've got Cooper lighting or RTI or URC lighting. So we've got a fair amount of Z-Wave devices through capital sales. The next question is there ever a speed issue with Z-Wave? I have tested, and I work actually hand in hand with the Z-Wave Alliance with doing testing for them. I have not had an issue with speed. The biggest thing is how to set it up. So the one nice thing with Z-Wave is that it will automatically find the fastest route. It does not rely on the hub to send communication back and forth to devices, meaning that if a sensor goes off, it will tell that light switch that it's associated with instantly. This is what happened. So as long as you set it up correctly, no, there's no issue with speed. What a lot of people miss is the association, the ability to do associations. Now, associating a device says that this sensor is going to control these switches. The hub will still see that communication and will still react to it, but the communication does not have to go to the hub or the gateway, whatever you want to call it, and then go back out to the light switch. It makes speed much quicker. How about pitfalls such as interference and failure, etc.? I think I touched base on that already, but first of all, with interference, like I said before, Wi-Fi, you're going to have some more issues with interference with Wi-Fi depending on where you're at. You know, if you're installing a house out in the middle of nowhere, you're not going to have much issues with interference. If you're doing it downtown Minneapolis, New York, you know, you're going to a place where there's a lot of Wi-Fi, you're going to have interference. There are very few devices that are working in the 900 megahertz frequency that you have to worry about with interference with Z-Wave for two very distinct reasons. One, it's a very short transmit, so there's less chances of it interfering. It auto reroutes and heals itself. So if it transmits a device and doesn't get a response back saying that device received it, it will reroute and try it again. And there's only really two devices that I've ever seen cause any issues. The old wireless landline. So there's a couple old wireless landlines, wireless phones that use the 900 megahertz frequency, and the good old nanny cam, baby monitor. You know, there were some that were in the 900 megahertz frequency. So only two devices that I know of that I've seen that have ever had any interference issues with Z-Wave. And with failure, the more devices with Z-Wave, the less failure you're going to see. Because even if, let's say, a switch does fail, it can automatically reroute and find a new path. If your access point fails, your router fails, your whole wireless gets taken down. It locks up, whatever it is. It's not communicating anymore. Or a router fails. A lot of times that means it doesn't communicate anymore. There's a lot more places to fail when you're looking at Wi-Fi than you are with Z-Wave. Z-Wave only goes so far correct versus Wi-Fi. Can you go longer distances by connecting to internet? Or other words, Z-Wave does not have a way without the internet to communicate to an outside building. Yes and no. There are multiple versions of Z-Wave chips. Just like with Wi-Fi, you can get the newer Z-Wave chips can go up to 330 feet line of sight. You can also, like I said, they both rely on each other. They both have a place, Z-Wave and Wi-Fi, Z-Wave and network. You can put more than one hub on the same network. So if you're going to an on-site building and there is a network out there, or there is Wi-Fi out there, you know, where maybe you're doing a wireless bridge, you could put another Z-Wave hub out there and have one as the master, one as the slave, and add those other devices to the slave hub. So depending on the range, you can definitely get to outside buildings. There are ways. How do products like Insteon fit into Z-Wave protocols? RF communication over power line. We're talking about, just like when we mentioned Zigbee, Insteon is another RF communication, but this one uses power line. And depending on the gateway you use, depending on what you're using, there are certain gateways that allow a virtual device to be added, like Insteon. But just like when I was talking about Wi-Fi or network protocols, where the transmit layer may be all the same, or the transmission layer, but the application layers are different, Insteon and Z-Wave have a different application layer. So that relies on the device or the hub to be able to communicate and translate the Insteon info. I'm not going to go into a ton. Like I said, there's a lot of devices out there. There's a lot of protocols out there. Some of the major ones are Wi-Fi and Z-Wave, especially nowadays. That's why I want to touch base on it. We can go over Zigbee, and we could go over Insteon. We could go over all these different protocols, but there are a ton out there. Any other questions, guys? Somebody just said, is Holden in here? I would assume no, since he knows everything. Yes, he does know everything. And no, he is not on this webinar. But just so you're aware, we do record, like I said, we do record all these webinars. We post them all on the YouTube channel. So this will be posted. Usually it takes 24 to 40 hours to get it up on our YouTube channel, but it will be here. The next question that came in, what hub do you recommend? That's an interesting one, because every manufacturer has a hub. You hear of Samsung SmartThings hub. You hear of Mios, Vera hubs. You hear of all these different hubs. Fabaro's got a great hub as well. And what I can say with hubs, a lot of times, you guys have always heard the saying, you get what you pay for, right? Well, that kind of goes with hubs as well. Okay. Things you got to keep in mind. You can have up to 232 devices connected to one hub. That does not mean that every hub is going to be able to support 232 devices or nodes. A lot of hubs are limited to the amount of memory they have. Okay. So if you go with the Vera Edge, let's say, that really has the capability to do up to 70 devices, give or take. But if you start adding scenes into that, that takes a lot of memory. I've seen a lot of people that have only been able to put roughly 30 devices on it because of the amount of scenes. This is why Fabaro has two different hubs. One they specify at up to 70 devices, and that's including an extra 50 scenes. So a lot of processing power, and that's in their Home Center Lite. Fabaro also has their Home Center 2. That is a mean hub. 2 gigs of RAM, dual processor. I mean, it's a mean hub. That one, you could do 232 devices and have virtually almost as many scenes as you want. I haven't seen somebody max it out yet. But it's also more expensive. So you really get what you pay for, okay? And the one nice thing is you have the ability to decide which one may fit your project. You know, a lot of devices are going to be less than 70 devices. A lot of projects will be. But if you have something that says, hey, I want to do more with this, I want to be able to expand, I want to be able to have more scenes, I want to be able to do more virtual devices, tie in my irrigation, tie in all these things, then you may want to look at the Home Center 2. I have tested a lot of Z-Wave hubs, and the one I'm running at my house right now is the Home Center 2 from Fabaro. And I've got probably 75 devices on my network with a lot of different scenes, and my gateway is running at roughly anywhere from 10 to 25%, depending on what's all going on. So I still have a long way to go with that hub that I could push it before I start having issues. Can Z-Wave devices communicate with Zigbee devices? Not directly. Okay, you need to be able to have 2 hubs that will communicate with each other. You cannot go and buy Zigbee devices and add them to a Z-Wave network. You can't buy Z-Wave devices and add them to a Zigbee network. There are certain devices that may have a Zigbee chip in them, as well as a Z-Wave chip, as well as a Wi-Fi chip. Okay, but keep in mind, just like with Wi-Fi, Zigbee, just because it says Zigbee does not mean that every device that says Zigbee will be able to communicate with each other. Z-Wave, if something says Z-Wave, it will work on your Z-Wave network. Next question, can Z-Wave and Zigbee coexist in an RTI or URC system? Yes and no. Like I just stated, as long as they are separate systems, meaning you're going to have a Z-Wave hub, you're going to have a Zigbee hub. As long as those hubs are supported by the URC or the RTI system, then yes, it would be set up as two different devices, but yes, you can. And I hope that makes more sense. I can always explain more or look at the specific application afterwards. I'd be more than happy to talk to you guys about it. The presentation, this PowerPoint will be on our website. You can also reach out to your local account manager at Capital. We'll be happy to get you the info, get you a link to it. Does the URC hub have the ability to interface with Alexa without AMX Home Pro or TC base station? That is an interesting one. And again, that comes into the application layer. I know that Mios has a virtual device in their database that is for Amazon Alexa. I also know that the Fabaro Gateway has a device, a virtual device, to be able to integrate your Amazon Alexa as well, which would mean that you would not need to have a third-party system like URC, MX Home Pro, or Total Control for your base station. So, you know, there are definitely ways around it. And again, this is where this is why I put this Wi-Fi versus Z-Wave out there, is to know, you know, Amazon Alexa, that is a Wi-Fi piece. How do you make that work? Do you go with everything Wi-Fi? And I get a lot of questions on Amazon and Google because they are the talk of the town right now. And everybody wants to work with them. And the biggest thing is, it comes down to that transmission layer and application layer, and we need to do our due diligence to find out if they are able to work together with other devices. Unfortunately, there's no white paper that just spits out and says, is everything control? Because everything changes all the time. Spell the hub brand. I can't find it on your line list. I think you're talking about Fabaro. It's Fibaro is what the brand is. Fibaro. So what would be more, let's see here. Jordan, I can't exactly understand what you're asking there. I think you're talking, you mentioned driver for Zigbee over to via LAN. I don't know if that has something specific to do with a control system, a specific control system. If you want, I can talk with you offline on that one. And the next question that just popped up, Alexa integration. I think I just went into that a bit. And again, if there's specific devices, specific brands, you may want to verify, especially when you're looking at a Wi-Fi device. One of the main things with this webinar I want to make sure that you guys are aware of is that when you see a Z-Wave device, you will know it will work. You do not have to do your research to find out if two Z-Wave devices will work together. When you see a Wi-Fi device, an IoT device, which is, you know, everybody wants IoT. Just because they're IoT devices does not mean that they will always work together. It sucks, but, you know, we need to make sure and do our due diligence and find out to make sure that they will work together, okay? You know, there's Ring, Amazon Alexa, Google Home, you know, the list, I could sit here all day and list names of devices that are IoT. That doesn't mean that they will always work together because it lands down to that application. The transmission protocol will always work, the application layer may not. Okay, So unfortunately, we need to do our due diligence before we go and say yes or no to find out if they do. Is there any other questions, guys? And again, I would love to talk with you guys on anything, products, specific applications, whatever it is. Feel free to reach out to me. I would love to chat with you guys to see what you guys are working on and to see if we have a solution for you. Or you could also reach out to your local account managers at Capital Sales, and they would be happy to help you as well. So I'll give it just another minute or so to see if anybody else has any questions. I want to thank you guys again for taking time out of your day. I know this was more of a high-level overview of Wi-Fi versus Z-Wave. It wasn't the nitty-gritties of Wi-Fi, the nitty-gritties of Z-Wave. There was no way I could do that in 20 minutes. But I do have webinars that get into more of the nitty-gritty on our YouTube channel. And I would definitely recommend you guys hop on it. If there's no more questions, guys, I want to thank you guys all for hopping on, taking time out of your day. Please reach out to your account manager at Capital or myself. Love to chat with you guys and see what you guys are working on. Also, I'm always looking for ideas and requests on what to do for the next webinars coming up. If you guys have any requests, you know, maybe it's Zigbee, maybe it's Insteon, whatever it is, maybe it's specific projects. I don't know. If you guys have requests, please reach out to your account manager or myself. Let us know. I pick these webinars out more on what I'm getting for questions, you know, and what drove this one is Z-Wave and a ton of questions on, does this work, you know, of IoT devices? What works with Amazon? Does this work? Does that work? And that's what drove this webinar. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer anything that you need. How about a Fibaro Lite setup webinar? You know, maybe that's definitely one we could look at going into the gateway. Fibaro Lite versus Home Center 2. What are the differences, how to set them up, what you get out of one or the other, and how to choose them. That would be a great webinar, and I will definitely, you know, try and get that on the calendar. You know, I've had a lot of people ask how to set it up and what are the differences. So thank you, Ernie. We'll definitely look at that and try and get it on the calendar soon. So thanks, guys, and I hope to hear from you guys soon. And if you guys need anything, please feel free to reach out. You guys have a great day.